But that hasn't gotten folks off the street. They're just totally ignoring the curfew. And after what we saw last night, what could that bring? Let's go live to Brian Yanes on the Upper West Side of New York City. Brian, things look like they're taking a turn near Times Square at the moment. Tell us.
Laura, good evening. Yeah, so we're getting multiple reports about downtown and Times Square. But what we have seen thus far, though, is that there have been protesters that were out throughout the day. It is different than what we saw at this moment last night with large groups of looters that were just going in and out of Midtown Manhattan. Behind me is what is a blockade. They are blocking cars right now from entering Manhattan. This is part of the new aggressive actions that they're taking tonight, given what happened yesterday with the looting. The curfew now is at 8 p.m. Last night it was at 11 p.m. They are now blocking anybody who is not a resident or essential personnel from coming in. Last night we saw so much looting and people putting it into cars, a lot of out-of-state license plates, and that was a big problem. So they're hoping that this will stop. But we are getting some, there is some action downtown. We'll see what happens. The night is still young. In terms of how New York has responded, there's been a lot of back and forth about what could have been done differently yesterday. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo saying that the NYPD and Mayor Bill de Blasio didn't do their jobs last night. The mayor and the NYPD both said that they do not believe that the National Guard should be called into New York and that they will have this under control. So we shall see what happens. But again, tonight there is an aggressive stance in terms of the curfew. Protesters are out. We have seen them. They have been marching. Everything that we have seen has been peaceful tonight. In terms of the protesters that are out past curfew, there's no indication that the NYPD is stopping protesters who are peaceful. So we'll see how that unfolds throughout the night. But again, compared to last night, you hear that it was unbelievable from intersection to intersection to intersection of hundreds of looters. And we do know that more than 500 looters have been arrested over the last 3 days in New York City, and that the majority of them actually were released because of New York's bail reform laws that have been a topic of conversation up here in New York about trying to reform or to change those because of the very thing of the fact that some of these looters, or many of the, if not all of these looters, will be allowed to go right back onto the street. So the night is still young, but right now it is different than what we saw last night, at least with our own eyes thus far, and from what we can tell that the NYPD is dealing with. But there are some indications of some action downtown. We'll see. Laura?
All right, Brian, thanks so much. We'll check back with you throughout the hour. Now I want to get to an important topic that I think a lot of you are wondering about. How to heal. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, whatever your political views, whatever your race or ethnic background, wherever you live, these past 3 months have tested you in some way. The coronavirus deaths, the lockdowns, massive job losses, education disruptions, loneliness, depression, and then, just as we were turning the corner, protests, unrest, violence, the death of an unarmed black man, it all spilled out, coast to coast, after that senseless killing of George Floyd. Now, many of you wonder if it's even fixable at this point. I've been hearing from you. And given how much anger flashes on the screen every day and every night, and so many using a tragic death as permission to loot and even assault innocent business owners and law enforcement, the honest feeling of it's sadness and righteous anger over Floyd's death that could be channeled into positive dialogue, it's just overshadowed by destruction and chaos. Antifa and their allies, they're on a mission. And it ain't about justice. It's not about George Floyd. They want to abolish our rights under the Constitution, and they want to rewrite our history. They want us to hate our country like they hate our country. Now today, to clear my head, what I did is I went on a bike ride. I know that sounds frivolous at a time like this, but I had to clear my head. It was one of those days. And I took my oldest son around the north side of the National Mall. But what I saw when I was there made me want to cry. I've lived here for 30 years, and the only time before today that I saw National Guard troops around our national monuments was after 9/11. But there they were, dozens of them, guarding the Lincoln Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial, and the World War II Memorial. Now, a few days earlier, the World War II memorial had been vandalized with spray paint. For the extremist radicals, nothing, not even a place of honor such as this, is sacred. Well, once again, they misread the American people. These sites and what they represent, whom they honor, are sacred to us. So what did we do? Well, my son and I, we stopped and we said a short prayer, and then I proceeded to thank every member of the Guard that we came upon. And I told each and every one how much we appreciated them. It was a cross-section of America, African-American men and women serving alongside white men and women, mostly young. They were keeping watch as runners, tourists streamed by, some protesters, but it was quiet. Now, presumably, they're more worried about what happens at night tonight in Washington, and we hope for the best. When those brave spray paint militants come out to desecrate and destroy. Of course, none of them know what real sacrifice is, for if they did, they'd be doing something positive with their lives. The way forward for the rest of us, though, requires that we get back to the basics. We don't need a new normal. We just need normal. Because normal Americans want a fair and just society where the rule of law applies equally to all people, regardless of race. Normal Americans are disgusted by the killing of George Floyd. Normal Americans think the current situation is so out of control that the U.S. military needs to be called in to bring order to the streets. Check out this new Morning Consult poll showing 58% support calling in the troops to aid state and local police, including nearly half of the Democrats. Now, the same party that's been promising African Americans better lives for decades. Our first African American president was propelled into office not once but twice with a majority of white support. Yet when it comes to delivering actual results, including for African Americans, despite what you hear in the media, despite everything you heard just today in the media, Donald Trump has done better than anyone. Before the coronavirus, most jobs created went to women and minorities, 7 million. In total, most of those women and minority. Black Americans saw their lowest unemployment numbers ever. Increased home ownership, school choice, criminal justice.
Is that what they're seeing now? You know, you can talk about the used-to-bes all day long, but the used-to-bes ain't worth a nickel if the used-to-bes ain't what it is today, pertaining to today. I don't even like it.
So, from the people I've talked to, defense lawyers, law enforcement officials, other
up against the wall. They had been showing restraint according to Shimon, who's out there now. But you can see now the situation has escalated and they're trying to calm things down. Let's go back to Shimon Prokupecz. Shimon, what are you saying?
Yeah, so someone tried to come through the crowd and now police are trying to...
I gotta go.
We're gonna go to the other side, officer. We're going to the other side. Where we see them.
Tell them you're on live. Tell them you're on live.
We're on... We're at CNN, guys. Come here, guys. Let me just get our team together. Mark, over here.
So as you can understand...
I've already gone...
Go ahead, Shimon.
Go ahead, Don. No, I was just going to say, you know, you were watching Jason. I was watching Jason Carroll earlier in Brooklyn, and I actually got a call from a police official who was a little distressed about what he saw and called me and said if there was any help that I needed to let him know. So, you know, we're trying to let the police here know that we're just trying to do our jobs and making sure that we can capture these moments. And, you know, it just takes some talking to them sometimes. But, you know, we have been pushed back a little bit here. But things seem to be calming down now. They're trying to keep people back. They're also down the block. Here, they've been pushing this group. I don't know if you can see them, but they're pushing this group all the way down the block.
Were these two separate groups, Shimon? Or was this one group that was once all together? Shimon, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Don. I'm sorry.
I said, is this
What was the
this two
question?
separate groups, or was this group all together at once?
Yes.
At one point.
No, it was two separate groups. We were walking, so we were in Times Square, and we walked down. We were going to Union Square because we heard there was some activity. And on our way here, we saw the group on 23rd Street, and they were running and cheering, and we heard glass breaking. And so we ran over, and we saw them looting. This group then met up with the other group that was coming. The other group, as I said to you, we're for the most part today, I was with them. I saw the leader, one of the leaders of the group. They've been peaceful. They've been good. It is always what happens here is that you have the agitators and in some the bad actors who meet up with the peaceful protesters and stirs things up. And the police are aware of this, right? We've heard of that. We've heard of them talking about this now for days. And there's also a curfew, so they need to clear the street. And I think that the peaceful protesters, as you saw, were trying to bring down the temperature, trying to diffuse the situation. But bottles started flying at the police officers and other debris, and that was it. The police moved in. And now they're just standing around. They've made several arrests.
Did this car try to come through an intersection, or do we know? Because were the streets blocked off when these protesters were coming through? Where did this car come out of nowhere?
I don't know, Don, but all of a sudden the police were saying something to them, and I think and then within a few seconds they were pulling people out of the car. You saw them throw someone on the ground. They threw someone up against a wall here. So we don't know. Right now, the four individuals, it looks like, who were in that car.
Well, Shimon, let me ask you something.
Have their hands up.
There was you could go over to where okay, there they are. Go on. Describe that before I ask you a question. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, they're holding them. They have their hands on the trunk here, and the police are trying to figure. I don't know why they're stopped on. It is after curfew. Cars are not. Remember, cars south of 96th Street are not supposed to be in Manhattan. So it's the curfew, and they close off the streets south of 96th Street. So I don't know how they wound up here or why they're here. They're also here arresting a man here, an individual. The police here are arresting. But things have settled down here for now. The police, I could see in the distance, are pushing, not pushing, but they're moving some people back. But yeah, I don't know. It is interesting. You're right. It's a good question. I don't know what this.
Well, my question was when you.
To do, but something.
This is a question I was going to ask you. When you rounded the corner there, you saw this woman laying on the ground, and it's either you're a photographer or producer, I'm not sure, or maybe a security person.
It's our security team.
Said that she got hit by a car. I don't know if she got hit by the car and then that's where she landed that way. I'm not sure. I'm just asking because what car would she have been hit by?
You know what, Don? She's not even here anymore. She got up.
Yeah.
She's gone. So thankfully, she's not seriously hurt. She may have just been hurt as people were running from the scene. But I think, the point you raised about there were two groups here. They met up. The bad actors mixed in with the good actors, and that was it.
Let me jump in here, Shimon, because I need to tell people what's going on the screen. Just stand by. I'm going to get back to you in a short order. So 10:40, and you're watching obviously CNN, and this is what's playing out in New York City. Right side of your screen are Shimon Prokupecz on the scene of this incident that's happening in Chelsea, where we saw several people being detained by police officers. One of them you see there to the right being walked away with those those zip tie cuffs on. And then on the left of your screen, you're looking at the Manhattan Bridge, and there's a large group of protesters on this bridge. I'm not sure if they're making their way to Brooklyn or back. I'm not exactly sure in which direction they're going. This is a courtesy of our affiliate WPIX, and we don't have control, and we don't have any CNN personnel. We're just watching their pictures. But you're looking at this. You're seeing an NYPD car, and then a bus, or what appears to be a bus or some sort of motor home type vehicle, trying to get through that crowd of protesters on the bridge. And so at one point we saw on the bridge people taking a knee, And if they push in closer, we can see exactly what's going on. People are just sort of walking around the vehicle. The vehicle may not be moving. Yeah, that's what's happening. The people are walking around the vehicle. The vehicle is not moving. And again, this is what's happening in New York City right now. And this appears to be peaceful. It doesn't look like there's anyone being detained. No one is out of order. At one point, as I said, these folks are looking like they were taking a knee, kneeling there right in the middle of the bridge, right over the river. So here's the thing, though. There's a curfew at 8 p.m. tonight, supposed to go into effect. Police department under really considerable amount of pressure, along with the mayor.
Boy, oh boy, if that ain't a recipe just waiting to happen, a tinderbox just waiting to explode. Having all that many people combined together, coming out of the woodwork like that. What is it, something like 22 million people in New York? I think it's right around 20 million people. Good grief. The cops has got their hands full. Even though they're well trained, and even though they went through what they went through with 9/11, this won't be no comparison. No comparison. This is an uprising here in America. And that's how it'll be looked upon by Europe, Germany, France, Australia, Japan, Canada, Russia, China, Mexico, South America, New England, Greenland. It'll be looked upon as being an uprising. God have mercy on us all. Good luck to all of us is all I got to say, because this is just a recipe for a catastrophe that now looms over the American people's heads. It is so sad. People's got their priorities in the wrong place. A while ago, I was down at Mr. Norton's place. I was talking on the phone. Whenever, wasn't getting loud, wasn't saying nothing, wasn't getting excited or nothing. Just sitting there talking on the phone. And all of a sudden, the dog comes up and takes a nip at me. Tries to bite me in the foot. Just so happens I got good boots on, so he didn't hurt me. But it wasn't the first time that he's taken a nip at me. And it wasn't the first time that there's been complaints about this same dog. So I hurried up and hung up the phone, told the people that I was talking to, the person, that I needed to attend to this. Because it struck me the wrong way about how that dog snuck up in behind me and tried to take a nip at me. As soon as I hung the phone up, I said, I'm fixing to take care of some business with a dog. And I reached down, I grabbed up a stick, and May Norton come unglued. And basically told me how the cow was going to eat the cabbage, that I was on their property. That was their dog. And I told them, I said, it don't matter if I'm on your property and it's your dog. If I feel intimidated or infuriated by this animal that has nipped at me, that I feel like is going to bite me, I have a right to protect myself. Not on my property. Not on my property. And I looked at her. I said, well, then I ain't got no business being on your property then, do I? It's pretty obvious that whenever a relationship, a 50-something year relationship, whenever people put their priorities above other people to the point that she thinks more of her dog than she does a human being, especially somebody that's tried to help them as many times as I've tried to help them pertaining to the Norton family. I'm like, enough is enough. And I called the police a while ago out of Union City, the Obion County Sheriff's Department. They come down there. I explained the situation to them. They go, well, by and large, you was on their property. By and large, there is no blood. If there was blood, it would be different. If you wasn't on the property, it would be different. But because you was on their property and there is no blood, you basically just got freaked out. And I said, yeah, I got freaked out at the expense of a relationship that obviously I didn't need to have to begin with, because if these people think more of a dog, in which they got like, I guess about 10 or 12 big dogs, in addition to all the little dogs, it would be different if they only had one sacred dog. If they had one sacred dog, I could say to myself, well, you know what? She's old, he's old. That's all they got. Leave it alone, Juby. Just leave it alone. But whenever you got 10 big dogs and about 8 little dogs, you can pretty well pick and choose who your favorite is. And it's obvious that it wouldn't have mattered if it would have been the worst of the worst or the best of the best dog. She made it up in her mind, and he did too, because he went along with it, that Juby did not have a right to protect himself or to discipline that animal that was misbehaving. She wasn't going to discipline the animal because the animal continues to keep doing it. It had done it to me more than once. I had went to Walmart and bought $50 worth of dog food for those dogs. I couldn't tell you the amount of times that I've been over there towards trying to help. But this particular time, I guess it's maybe because of all the stuff going on with the news and stuff, I don't know. But this particular time, while I was talking to a friend over in Kenton, Tennessee, it just went through me like a dose of sauce going through a widow woman, that I'm sitting there trying to communicate with an individual on the phone while this dog sneaks up in behind me and tries to take a bite out of me. It did not set well with me. And whenever I dropped the telephone call towards going to discipline the dog, well, obviously that didn't set well with them. So it's pretty obvious that people's got their priorities in the wrong place. Whenever you think more of an animal than you do your neighbor or your friend, somebody that's been there for you and somebody that's tried to help you again and again and again, over a wretched, worthless, four-legged animal. I mean, like I said, it'd be different if it was the only dog. It'd be different if it was a pedigree dog. It would have been different if it was a special trained dog, like a CNI dog. None of the above. We're talking about a cur dog. A dog that basically is a Heinz 57. Big, long-legged, probably weighs 45, 50 pounds. Whenever something like that exceeds the priority status of our friendship, it's pretty obvious that I didn't have much of a friendship to begin with. Whenever a cur dog, that's all it was a cur dog, a Heinz 57 dog, whenever that animal holds more priority status than a 50-something year relationship that I've had with her and her family, then that pretty well speaks volumes about what she feels like in her heart and in her mind, as well as her husband, of how that they feel about me. So, best thing for me to do is let it alone. Don't call them. Matter of fact, I've done put a block on both of their lines. Somebody called me a while ago with heavy breathing. I don't know if it was one of their kids or it was a local around here. But the bottom line is, I've got a right to protect my body and to protect myself whenever somebody is imposing, or something is imposing bodily harm to me. Especially if I'm sitting there minding my business, doing what is rightfully, I thought, proper and just towards sitting in a chair talking to an individual on the phone. The individual on the phone, I called him back. He said, "Man, what went on down there?" And I explained it to him. He said, "You just need to get away from that then." He said, "If they think more of that dog than they do you didn't have a snowball chance in hell." He said, "Best thing for you to do is back out of that driveway and don't never come back. Because if they think more of that dog, or any dog, even a CNI dog, more than they do a human being, especially one that they've supposedly known for 50-something years and had a relationship, and I've been with them and done things with them and done things for them, sat in the hospital all day whenever Jimmy had an operation, towards an open heart operation, sat in there with May all day long. Did none of these other people sit in there with her. None of these other people went in there and sat with her. But I did. I sat in there until 4 or 5 o'clock that afternoon until we knew that he was going to be all right. To be treated that way is a violation of my relationship. Our relationship. And you don't abuse relationships like that if you care anything about the relationship. I remember one time my father had a dog. He was a ringwormer. Crazy dog. Half the time it done right. Half the time it hunted good. Half the time it done crazy stuff. Well, this particular time, it bit J.M. Willis. And as soon as J.M. Willis told him about what had happened, Dad just walked up, politely grabbed the shotgun off the wall, walks outside, and puts the dog down. That was the end of that. Because if my father had to make a choice between our neighbor or a friend versus an animal, it should be hands down towards which is the most importantest. There's bad dogs just like there's bad people. There's bad lazy cats, mysterious bad lazy cats, just like there's good cats. You know, if it's a good cat, it's gonna work for its living. It's gonna take care of the elements and the critters outside, and it's gonna pull its weight. It's gonna try to be there for people other than just being a pet, if it's a good animal. But if it's not a good animal, especially if it's trying to bite every Tom, Dick, and Harry, you may want to consider doing something with the animal. But like I said, that's over with now, and I'm glad that it ended the way that it ended, in one way, that it didn't turn into something violent or turn into something horrible. But I hate it that over that lengthy of a relationship had to be toppled or turned upside down over a cur dog.
Mayor from the governor of New York State, Andrew Cuomo, who was
expected. It was a wonderful response to what we were trying to.
See, you can't tell me that stuff
Mayor
like
Turner,
this.
I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Don.
Stuff like this on TV. If you have a caring, loving soul to begin with, if you care about life, if you care about your own life, if you care about other people's life, you can't tell me that what's going on right now with all this heavy protesting for the past 6 or 7 nights, 6 or 7 days, over this individual getting wrongfully killed. You can't tell me that this will not have a profound effect upon people's emotions and upon how sensitive that matters like this that can become. Because if the same occurrence would have happened maybe 5 months ago, before the coronavirus ever hit, I probably would have said, "You stupid dumb dog. You stupid dumb dog." And maybe that's what I should have said this time. But whenever there was another party involved, it kind of made me feel belittled that now I've got an individual on the phone that now is aware of what went on out here pertaining to a dog. And of course, whenever I called him back up the second time and told him what the dog owner, our owners, had done, now he's fully aware of the situation towards what had occurred. Fully aware. And it brings disgrace in some form or fashion, and I don't want the disgrace to fall upon my shoulders because I'm not the one that asked the dog to go over there and bite me. I wasn't doing nothing to the animal or to the animal's masters other than sitting there talking in a regular tone of voice. So it brings shame and embarrassment, not from me, but from the animal and from the animal's masters. Because if they cannot contain their animal, or if they will not let other people contain their animal whenever they misbehave like that, then obviously these people probably don't need to have no animals. Because animals are not supposed to go around trying to bite people. Not if they're domestic animals. Now, if you had a wild raccoon and you were trying to tame it, domesticate it, that may be different. If you had a wild deer, wild snake, that may be different. But these was domesticated animals that have been living with them for years and years and years. And it wasn't like that. I'm no stranger. I had been there many a time before. They're very familiar with my automobiles. They're very familiar with my scent. They're very familiar with me going in there and feeding them back in the wintertime whenever Jimmy was down on his back and I had to go buy $50 worth of dog food. These animals are very aware of me and my friendship towards their masters. Very aware. And for this animal to misbehave is one thing, but for the masters of the animal to allow for the animal to misbehave and then not be disciplined for misbehaving, that just shattered our relationship. And like I said, it may be because of all the stuff going on in the news, but I'm not to be whored out by anybody or anybody's vicious animals or anybody's animals that has the potential of being vicious. Because I've got a right to protect my body and to protect myself, even if I am in the center of the courthouse. If I'm in the center of the courthouse and somebody's got a seeing-eye dog and that dog decides to want to take a bite out of me and that dog and that dog's owner are going to have a problem right there in the middle of the courthouse. If I feel like that my life is in danger in any form or fashion, that's when all kinds of red flags start coming up. And they're supposed to. And if the owner to the animals, or any type of owners at all, they'll discipline the animal. That way, maybe the animal won't do that again. But if the owners allow for the animal to continue to do it again and again and again, same way with people, the more you let them get away with something, the more they're going to continue to try to get away with it. And I guess it's time for Donald Trump to intervene pertaining to bringing in martial federal troops. I hate to see this. It makes me sick at my very core to think that this is escalating into this. But there's nothing that I can do other than sit back like everybody else and grin and bear it and watch it unfold right in front of our very eyes, because I know eventually it's going to affect me somehow or another. It will either affect me towards the price of gas going up, or it will affect me towards going to the grocery store, and instead of me getting my favorite this, I'll have to settle for that. Or instead of me having this, I'll be without that. I know that this is going to affect me and harm me in some sort of way. And if people are realistical and they watch this stuff, they should know the same thing, that even though they're not there directly being affected, indirectly, it is going to affect people's lives in some form or fashion. And if it don't do nothing else but what it's doing right now towards affecting people's emotions. And maybe that's the reason why that I'm on the edge the way that I am pertaining to a biting dog. And I pray to God, because I said a couple things that I'm sure that I shouldn't have said. I gave Miss May the middle finger. I know I shouldn't have done that. I'm going to have to ask the Father to forgive me of that, because my emotions overwhelmed me over the way that she and him responded to this event. I'm not perfect. I can't walk on water, and I'm still a human being is the only thing that I can say. But I'm not going to allow, even at the expense of a relationship, I'm not going to allow for an animal to paw and try to viciously bring harm and hurt to my life, and me think that I'm going to sit back and grin and bear it and like it. Because I'm not. I told you what happened pertaining to my father and the neighbor and a high-priced dog. This was a pedigree dog that he went out and killed. He just didn't kill a common old cur dog. He killed a pheasant dog, a retriever. But once more, my father made a decision in less than 10 seconds whenever J.M. Willis had told him that. And it didn't take him a debate. He didn't have to sleep on it. He didn't go to bed. They didn't talk about it. Once he made his decision that this is what I need to do, if I'm going to maintain any type of friendship with my neighbor, because my neighbor is worth 1,000 dogs, he grabbed up the gun and went outside and he domesticated the animal. And that, out in the country, especially back then, that was the proper way of doing things. That was the way people handled things. They didn't call the pound. They didn't pay $100 to have the dog put asleep. They got a bullet. Cost about maybe 50 cents. Or it was back then. I don't know what they are now. But they took care of business, and we dug a hole and shoved the dog off in the burial spot. That was the end of that. I get frustrated in watching all this stuff going on TV, knowing that theoretically, right now, we're supposed to be living in utopia and peace, and because of this resistance movement that occurred back in 1988 and 89, it has now jeopardized all of our
hours ago
liberties and hopes for peace and calm and prosperity and utopia, to the point that now this is all escalating. And I guess that's another reason why that I'm so emotional and I get so hurt about watching this kind of stuff on TV, is because I realize that the people have been bamboozled. I realize that the ministry has been bamboozled. I realize that God's chosen select pertaining to the saints of God. And no, I'm not perfect. No, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'm going to get emotional. Sometimes I'm going to say things that I didn't mean. Sometimes I'm going to say things that I wish I could retract or take from. But the fact of the matter is, I am human. It does hurt to watch all this violent protest and people tearing up all this stuff and doing everything that's going on. It hurts. It hurts to know that society is still living just as primitive today as what they was 5,000 years ago. We're just doing it in a different format. We're just, we've colored ourselves up. We're wearing different clothes. We're wearing sneakers. We're wearing nice clothing, and we drive decent cars, and we get around differently today than what they did 5,000 years ago. We've got electricity. We've got running water. We've got all, basic necessities. We have advanced in those areas, but in other areas, we're just the same as what there was 5,000 years ago, which is nothing more than a bunch of barbaric, heathenistic, selfish, greedy, unthankful, ungrateful people. So, in one way, we've taken one step forward, but in another way, we've taken many steps back. And it's just like a dog returning back to its vomit. We just continue to make that circle around again and again and again and again. Just like a hog returning back to its waller.
This was the hour last night. When the later curfew went into effect. A decision which came under heavy criticism. So an earlier curfew was established for tonight, but as you have seen, crowds are still out in the streets. There have been arrests, there have been conflicts with police officers, and it is all playing out live now, and we're following every single bit of it. Straight now to New York City, Brooklyn tonight, as a matter of fact, to be more specific, and Jason Carroll, who's standing on the Brooklyn side of the Manhattan Bridge. Jason, there are protesters who are on that bridge making their way towards you. What are you seeing? What do you know?
Slowly, and at the last word that we've got, Don, that those protesters, demonstrators still on the bridge, still slowly making their way to the Brooklyn side to get off the bridge. The question is what's going to happen when those demonstrators meet up with officers who are waiting for them. And as you can see, there are a number of officers who are out here. We also saw a bus where they normally take, those who they've arrested. They put inside that bus. We've seen that big.
See, around here, these people, especially the older people, they can't relate to the culture of the city life because they've never lived the city life. Most of them had never even visited the city life, much less know how the city life runs. They have no idea about all these different gangs and all these different ethnic groups and all these different religious groups. They have no idea out here in the country. But I know this, if enough of that goes on in the city, eventually it will come down into the rural areas. And whenever I start seeing license plates that's from Atlanta, Georgia, or St. Louis, or even Shelby County in Memphis, Tennessee, or Davidson County in Nashville, Tennessee, or New York, or Louisville, Kentucky, because I'm trained to look at plates. I look at plates because I want to know where you're from, because it speaks volumes about what to expect out of your character. If you're from South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, Arkansas, you kind of fit those people into the same category. If you're in Florida, you're probably in a different category. If you're from New York, or Los Angeles, or Albuquerque, New Mexico, you're in a different category. And unless you've got street smarts, and you have been out here on the beat, and understanding how people live, how different cultures live, how they respond, how they react, you really can't relate to these people unless you've actually went out on the beat and done like I've done towards traveling around, knowing different cultures, knowing different foods, knowing different religions, towards understanding these people. And whenever enough of this incites violence in the cities, eventually it will come down into the rural area. And that's the part that I worry about. In addition to going to the grocery store and can't find my favorite item and either have to settle for another item or just don't get that item, period. Whenever things gets this topsy-turvy, we could actually see shortages in tires to where you're limited on rubber on tires to where there's rationing on gas, rationing on this, rationing on that. And don't say that it can't happen, because we've just went through a period of being housed to the point that we basically was rationing toilet paper, rationing hand sanitizer, rationing meats in the frozen department. So don't tell me that we can't go back into the same period of time like they did during World War II, to the point that people was having to ration tires, ration gas, ration metal, ration this, ration that. Don't tell me that things can't do that again. Because whenever you get society this far out of focus, it affects the supply chain. And whenever the supply chain gets affected, then everything gets affected. And lashing out in this type of violence is not the proper way to handle it. Allowing for your animal to attack your neighbor or to attack your friend and not discipline the animal in some sort of way, or not allow for your neighbor that got attacked by the animal to discipline the animal, is not the proper way of doing things if you're going to maintain a relationship with your neighbor. There are certain criterias that I follow under. And once that criteria has been broken, I realize that it's been broke. It's just like a wife or a husband that you caught cheating. Once you realize that that yoke has been broken, that commitment, that relationship has been severed, it's over. And I'm not saying that it can't go back and be reworked or reconnected or refixed, but it takes the work of both parties. In other words, if Miss May or Mr. May comes to me tomorrow or within the next 2 or 3 days, because they can't call because I've got them on block, and that's where they're going to continue to stay on block. And if I hear where she's passed away, I'm going to be remorseful of the fact that I wasn't there to say my last goodbyes whenever they stick her off into a hole. If Mr. May or Miss May decides that they want to come back and talk to me and try to work things out, hey, I'm redeemable. I'm here at 291 Thompson Road. But if you're going to allow for your animal to do me the way that your animal done me, knowing that I was displeased in that, and then you're going to get mad at me because of what your animal done? No, it's over. This insanity situation is over. And if you can't figure out what you've just done, well then obviously you didn't need my friendship. You did not need. You was not worthy of my friendship. If you could not see things my way towards protecting my well-being with your vicious animal, then as far as I'm concerned, you're not worthy of my friendship. Because that's where I draw the line. And that's where I refuse to be whored out, or to be done wrong, or to be taken advantage of, or to be abused. The Christian society is to compromise only to a certain level towards turning thy cheek and offering thy other. Once that cheek continues to get hammered on again and again and again, then we as a Christian society are no longer recommended to have to continue to be a battering ram for somebody else's stupidity or for somebody else's abuse. That's where I draw the line in the sand and say, you know what? I'm better than this. I deserve better than this.
Seen that bus. We've seen a lot of the officers out here with those zip ties, so they're ready. They're ready to make arrests. The question is, how are they going to handle the situation when you have school?
You know, a lot of these people that are being instigators to all this, they actually may be looking at this situation in a counterproductive way, to the point that a lot of these people have been living in hell for the past 2 months by being in-housed because of the coronavirus. And because they don't have no money, and because the last resort, survival to the fittest, is to get out and steal, rape, rob, and pillage, they actually may be looking at this situation differently in their eyes towards, you know what, I would be better off arrested, put back in jail. At least then I got a hot shower and three meals and a cot. To where if I don't get arrested, I'm out here struggling on the streets. They're going to evict me from my apartment. They're going to evict me. I'm going to lose this. I'm going to lose that. So I really don't have nothing else to lose. Now, do I? In other words, they feel like that they're at a hopeless situation with their situation, to the point that being arrested in their eyes may actually look like a good thing, because they just went through hell with the coronavirus, which is to be blamed upon by China. The apple cart has been tipped over. And it just didn't get tipped over in China. It got tipped over all over the world.
Scores of people there. The majority of demonstrators that we've come in contact with have been telling us, not just tonight, but last night as well, that they want to come out here, they want to have their message heard. In fact, some of the speakers who came out and said, we don't want.
You know, this is an unnatural act to see this many people this quick take onto the streets like this. It would be almost like watching a man have a baby. It's a very, very unnatural act in what you're seeing right now. And obviously something has occurred very, very wrongly that has caused this many people to come out onto the streets. And whenever I say something has happened, I'm just not talking about police brutality of one individual's life, George, up in Minneapolis, that got strangled to death by a man's knee. We have a combining formula of a bad recipe that has occurred in people's lives, to the point that their lives has been turned upside down. And whenever you have this many people that is willing to jump, almost use the expression, off the bridge, but onto the bridge towards protesting like this, this should speak volumes to the rich, the powerful, and the leaders that are currently in charge, and those that have been in charge for the past 25 or 30 years, the one percenters. This should speak volumes to those same people that want to hang on to their power and to their old idiotic ideals that hasn't done nothing but prosper themselves rather than prosper the millennials. And whenever you have this many people, 99 percenters, that are hurting, this is the perfect formula, or the perfect recipe, the perfect storm of seeing what you're seeing right now.
We don't want to hear about looting. We don't want to hear about people coming out here trying to...
Let's fast forward it. You can pretty well tell if there's going to be a skirmish. Usually when you start seeing smoke, flashes of fire, usually that's, fast forwarding some more.
Looting and their
All right, then
Right after I get done
come
talking
up
to you.
on that.
Business because they sent all those senators to Washington. Is that answer?
All right, this is going to be all. This is going to be all this program. We've sat and watched these events happening live in New York City tonight, going over the Brooklyn Bridge and stuff like that. You know, I was up there, my son and I. Queens, Harlem, Long Island. It's just rows and rows and rows of nothing but concrete, asphalt, and people. Rows and rows and rows of nothing but concrete, asphalt, and people. Good luck to all of us.